Welcome, seeker of the truth. In this video, I am going to share the proofs of the existence of the God. All of these proofs, compiled by me from many resources during the process of finding the answers of mine. The video will consist of two parts. In the first part, we will see the proofs of existence of the God. In the second, we will talk about the detailed questions about the God. So let's get started. An atheist should be able to say, if I'm wrong and there is a deity that I can't comprehend, then the problem shouldn't lie with the evidence. The existence of God is a fundamental issue that concerns not only philosophers or professors, but also a person living in a rural village with no formal education. If this issue is truly fundamental, the evidence should be clear, obvious, and easily understood by everyone. So, why is there so much debate? Perhaps the issue isn't with the evidence itself. Trying to prove colors to someone with a veil over their eyes is pointless. Removing the veil will allow them to see the colors naturally. In this video, I will be using the storytelling technique of analogy while also exploring the topic within the triangle of logic, math, and science. To begin, let me pose a question. Is there any proof that God does not exist? There are two possible responses to this question. The first response might be, yes, there is proof of non-existence. However, such a claim is fundamentally flawed. In the science of logic, proof of non-existence is invalid and illogical. Since the existence of God is a subject of debate, the non-existence of God cannot be logically proven. Any argument asserting the non-existence of God is, from the outset, invalid because non-existence itself cannot be proven. The second possible response might be, no, there is no proof of non-existence. In this scenario, the person making this claim believes in something that they themselves acknowledge has no proof. Now let's return to our topic. People who do not believe in the existence of God try to make some explanations about the creation of the human. These explanations focus on three main elements. 1. It is created by natural events. 2. It is formed by atoms in combination with each other. 3. It is formed by the influence of DNA and hereditary information. I will start with an analogy by using these three elements. Let's imagine that there is a wonderful building in front of us. I see and admire the artistic beauty in every detail of this building. Then I start thinking about the construction process of this building. As I think about this, I see that I have four options. The first option is blind, deaf, and mindless workers. They have decided to build this structure and built by themselves. The second one is the bricks. These bricks wanted to build this wonderful structure, they became together and made it. The third one is the project guide that explains every part of the building process. This guide has built it by itself. Fourth, and the last one, is an engineer with knowledge and power. This engineer has used his knowledge and power to build it. The question is, looking at these four options, which option makes sense for the construction of the building? Which one would you choose? Yes, as you all said, the fourth option, the engineer. When human body and human beings are considered, we have more than 10 trillion of cells in our body, and each one of these cells includes around 800 mitochondria and around 10,000 ribosomes, tissues formed by the combination of cells, organs formed by the combination of tissues, our body systems, and our organism, and a wonderful human body at the end of this combination. At the beginning of our analogy, we examined the magnificent building and we have choose one of the options. Now let's continue by thinking about the creation of the human body. The first option is blind, deaf, and mindless natural events. They have decided to create human being. They did. They continue to doing it. The second option is the atoms. These atoms wanted to build this wonderful human body. They became together and made it. The third one is the DNA. That explains genetic information of the human. DNA has built it by itself. Fourth and the last one is the God. God has created them all with knowledge, willpower, strength, and life. Let's expand on this analogy a little further. The blind, deaf, and mindless workers in the first example represented natural phenomena with the same characteristics in the second example. The lifeless bricks in the first example represented atoms in the second example, which had no life qualities and no ability to choose. The project book in the first example represented the DNA, that is, the human project, in the second example. And finally, the engineer in the first example, who had knowledge, willpower, strength, and life, represented God. The building, in the first example, was built and completed once. However, the cells in the human body are renewed continuously. 4 people are born every second in the world. As I asked before, I want to ask the question, looking at these 4 options, which option makes sense for the creation of the human being? Which one would you choose? Yes, must be the fourth option again. My mind show me that the creator of previous generations, the creator of the current generation, and the creator of the future generations must be a God with information, willpower, strength, and the life. Even this example alone, we see it's sufficient to demonstrate the existence of God. However, I will continue with more examples. According to physics, if there is a work, there must be also a force to be able to done this work. Now imagine that a baby pulls a big plane. He crawls and pulls the plane with the rope he is tied to. When you see this situation with your eyes, it is possible to say that the baby pulls that plane. But in the mind, you know that this baby is not enough strong to pull this giant plane by crawling. When we look at the nature, I see a cow eats grass and produces milk. The bee produces honey from the flowers. The trees produces various fruits from the earth. As I see in the first example, the baby looks like pulling the plane by himself. I can see the similar situations also for these examples. In the example of the baby, I see that he pulls alone, but my mind told me that probably there is mechanical system or something in the plane that enabling movement of the plane. The cow produces milk without knowing the amino acids. The bee produces honey without knowing the minerals in it. The trees produces various fruits without knowing about vitamins. Also in these examples, I can see that there is another force with knowledge, willpower, strength, and life that provides them. Because what you don't have cannot be given to someone else. As a result, all of these works require knowledge, will, power, and life. When observed from the outside, these works occurred temporally sequentially. However, this indicates that those who produce them are not the ones at the final stage. The eyes of the mind says there is another force for these movement. In the world, we know that everything has a purpose. If you see a table with specially prepared delicious foods on it, you can understand that this table has prepared for a purpose. If you see a table with specially prepared delicious foods and rows on it, you can understand that there is another purpose on that. If you see a table with specially prepared delicious foods and a rose and also a wedding ring on it, you can understand that there is another purpose on this combination. As we see in these examples, the wonderful system of the world and the other circumstances in the world also given us for a purpose. Especially the power of human mind, which doesn't exist in any creature in the world, is given us for a higher purpose. The purpose of finding the artist of them, the creator. Fine-tuning in the universe. As you all know, since the 20th century, we have been able to produce scientific data about the formulation of constants in the universe and the fine-tuning of processes in the universe. Our universe is expanding acceleratingly by a force we call dark energy because we don't know what it is. We call the intensity of this acceleration the cosmological constant, lambda. The expansion rate of our universe, which has been expanding for 13.7 billion years, has been adjusted so precisely that the galaxies in the universe do not drift left and right, or our universe does not collapse due to gravity. In fact, if this acceleration were even less than 10 to the power of 120, our universe would collapse. Or if it were more, it would be torn and thrown away due to expansion. Let me try to explain what such a possibility means with an example. Let's imagine that we hide a single grain of sand among all the grains of sand in all the deserts, beaches, and oceans of the world. Let's randomly draw a grain of sand from all these sands. With this experiment, we can all understand how low the probability of finding this single hidden grain of sand is on the first try. Moreover, the 1 in 10 to the power of 100 probability represents only one of the many fine-tuning options available. It should be noted that life is only possible if all of these delicate adjustments in the universe occur simultaneously, because even the loss of one of these is enough to make the formation of life impossible. Of these forces, the strong nuclear force that binds the elements in the atomic nucleus together, gravitational force, which is the net acceleration transferred to objects due to the combined effect of gravity and centrifugal force, the electromagnetic force that causes the interaction between electrically charged particles, can be shown as an example. The realization of these low probabilities, which are all aimed at a purpose, leads us to a conclusion. This result is the existence of a power, that is, God, who knows everything with his knowledge and controls everything with his power.
Do natural laws control the universe?
Physics explains how the laws of nature work and investigates how these laws interact in the universe. However, physics does not directly explain why we are in this universe. Instead, it is intended to explain the events and phenomena we observe in the universe. Let's imagine that there is a car opposite a person. When this person looks at the car, we can explain why he sees it with the rules of optics and physics. Physics describes the functioning of optics. It doesn't explain why we live in a universe where these laws work. In another example, let's imagine we have 5 $100 bills in our pocket. In this case, math says we have $500, but it can't explain where $500 comes into our pockets. While the laws of physics describe the existence of laws, they cannot explain the existence of laws. The existence and analyzability of laws enable us to understand the universe and do science. Most importantly, the validity of physics formulas is a proof of the order and system in the universe. The subject of projectile motion in physics can be given as an example of this. When a horizontal force is applied to the ball in the figure below, the distance x that this ball can travel can be calculated with physics formulas. We saw the regularity, tried it, and formulated it. So far, I have explained the operation of the laws of nature. Now, I will explain how they exist. We know that even the simplest law is made by legislators. For example, the laws of Hammurabi, one of the oldest preserved written laws in history. Can Hammurabi's laws be written without Hammurabi? Of course, if there is a law, there is a legislator. Logically, Hammurabi should have existed before Hammurabi's laws. In conclusion, if there are rules, there must be a rule maker. The rule maker must exist before the rules. Considering the laws of physics valid in the universe, that there is a force that creates the rules, I understand that the power that created those rules existed before the rules. If there is a law somewhere, there is also a legislature and an executive. The order of a country cannot be maintained only by good laws. There must also be a good executive force that enforces those laws. For example, a legal sign saying, No smoking has no enforcement power on its own. However, if there is a power that operates and enforces that law is functional. So, the no smoking sign alone is not functional. If someone smokes next to it, it cannot impose any sanctions on that person. However, if there is a power to enforce that rule, that law will be functional. Therefore, the laws of physics on Earth are evidence of a God who controls them. Otherwise, they would be as useless as a no smoking sign. When we look at a military company, we see a wonderful order among the soldiers. This perfect state of order proves the existence of a commander, even if no commander is seen there. Even though we did not hear the commander, we can understand that the soldiers there received the same order, like the plants blooming together in the spring. Additionally, looking at the number of soldiers under this commander's command, we can learn more about the commander. The commander who commands more soldiers is more powerful. From here, we can understand the greatness of God, who has influence over everything from the smallest atom on Earth to the largest planets.
If everything created by God, who has created the God?
We can diversify this question. An engineer programmed the application. Who has programmed the engineer? The artist drew the picture. Who drew the artist? We understand that the person who does it and the thing done cannot be evaluated in the same way. But, to respond the question, I want to give another example. Let's imagine a phone. The design engineer of this phone. 1. Must be existing before this phone. 2. The rules of the phone are not valid for the engineer. For instance, when the screen is locked, the engineer won't be locked. As we see in this example, the concepts of time and place exists in the world. And these concepts are valid for the world. That's why the God exists before the world, and he doesn't need to be in a place. So asking this question becomes a contradiction. Another example is, again, for cell phones. The design engineer prepares and takes the project to the upper team. The team submit for approval to the technical manager. The technical manager submit for approval to the general manager. After the approve of the general manager, the phone can be produced. As we can understand from this example, there must be a decision maker on top of all. If there is no final decision maker, we enter an endless loop. In the universe, we can understand that God has all the control here. The greatest proof of this is the created universe. Because, as in the phone example, if there is a product, there is no endless permission loop. There is a last decision maker.
Why the God is invisible.
Human beings are able to see the materials and the material assets. We cannot deny some things because we have not seen them with our own eyes. For this, we need to use our 5 senses in their own areas. We do not use our ears to see. We do not use our tongue to hear. We should not use our eyes to understand things. Our brain must do the task of understanding things. For example, we see a mother taking care of her child. However, we cannot see the mother's compassion and love with our own eyes. We can understand it with our mind. We can see a magnificent structure with our eyes. We can understand his art with our minds. When we look at the sun, we see that its color is yellow. However, we can verify this information if we learn the science of optics with our minds, because sunlight is actually white in color and appears yellow as a result of some light refractions. So my attempt to understand it with my eyes failed again. And we saw once again the importance of using our minds to understand. As can be seen from these examples, God cannot be seen with the eye, can be seen with the mind.
Did God create us because he needed us?
Here there are 2 important words, to be want and to be need. For example, the mother of the child loves her baby. This is because of the mom wants to love. She doesn't need to love. The love for her baby is not an obligatory, but she needs to drink water. Drinking water is an obligatory for her. So there is a difference between these two words. God wanted to create the world. If we look around of us, we can see the people occupied with their own works. For instance, there is a successful professor. This professor researches on cancer treatment. He has specialized on it. We can't expect from him to start a pizza restaurant. The God is the creator. He creates in the best way. We know the God with his names. For example, El Hakim, making something most useful and logical way. He created the universe. He created us from nothing to existence. Because 200 years ago, anybody that watched this video was not existing. Ir-Rahim. He created the universe and provided favors to humans and other living creatures. For the other names and the explanations of the God, you can check the description part of the video.
Is God egoistic?
Before answering this question, let's understand what egoism means. First of all, egoism means being selfish. If God were selfish, he wouldn't have brought us from nothing to existence. Not only does it bring it from nothing to existence, it has created many benefits for us that we have just mentioned in the previous sections, like perfectly tuned physical constants, very low probabilities that come together for our lives, and their occurrence over and over again. Egoism means pretending to have something that you don't have. It means showing yourself as better than what you actually have. God says he knows everything, and he does. He says he has the power to do everything, and he does. The events and systematic movement taking place in the universe prove this. Also, egoism can occur between things of the same kind. For example, there is no egoism between a person and a glass, because their types are different. Therefore, there can be no egoism between God and humans. As we come to the end of the video, I would like to share some quotes from the words of British philosophy professor Antony Flew, one of the world's most famous atheists. The book written by Flew, who abandoned atheism and turned to God, called I Was Wrong, There Is a God, had a great impact in the world. In fact, the famous philosophy professor Gary Habermas said, Antony Flew's influence on atheists was so great that Antony Flew is to atheists what Jesus is to Christianity. Professor of philosophy Antonio Flew.
What really amazes me is the incredible design and architecture in this universe. God has planned and arranged the system in the universe so perfectly that it is necessary to be blind not to see it. No scientist with a mind and conscience can deny God. Denial of God. Those who deny it are actually denying themselves first, because humans are God's most magnificent creation. What makes me very sad is that as the most indomitable defender of atheism for 50 years, I influenced countless people and led them astray. This makes my conscience bleed and keeps me up at night. Therefore, I must work until my last breath to compensate for the damage I have caused. Atheists are not only mistaken, they are also betrayed because they lead people astray. I lost 50 years on the path to atheism, but now I am in the indescribable happiness of believing in God. I invite all humanity to believe in God so that they can achieve this honor.
Finally, let's imagine that an archaeological excavation is taking place. From this excavation site, pieces of wood resembling dinnerware, and remains of human clothing were found. Even if we do not see with our own eyes the people who lived here centuries ago, we understand and accept that there was a community that lived here in the past. In another example, let's take a judicial case related to a murder case. A judge reviews all the evidence before making a decision. Even if there is no camera footage of the moment of the murder, he can make a decision based on the evidence he has obtained. I expect you to think carefully about all the evidence I have explained throughout the video and make a decision.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد